Hey YouTube, Alex Conley here. Today's video, I want to talk about what do I miss about the United States when I'm traveling abroad. So right now I'm in Asia. I've been in Asia for a little over 2 months now, and I thought I'd just go ahead and mention some of the things that I miss about the United States while I'm gone. So first off, I miss Amazon Prime, and that may sound kind of silly to some people, but I really miss being able to, with one click, order things with 2 day shipping. The prices are relatively low. There's price standardization. There's no haggling with Amazon. There's no discussion. I either like the item at the price or I don't. There's no, okay, let's meet in the middle. Okay, 10% less. Okay, 20% less. None of that. It's just click, and 2 days later, I can expect that it will come in the mail. There's less stocking issues. So at some places, like in Phnom Penh, I love Phnom Penh, but Phnom Penh, I went to 3 different camera shops before I found this mic that I'm using right now. And I like this microphone, but certainly with Amazon, it would have just been one click. It wouldn't have taken an hour or two. It would have just been, and a couple days later, I would have had it. Kind of following up on that, retail environments, regardless of the country you're in, can be unpleasant. They're trying to push you to spend. They're trying to upsell you. Sometimes they get upset if they don't get the upsell. I've been in a couple of places in different countries where when they don't get the upsell, they give you a sour attitude, and that's a non-issue with Amazon. Now, Amazon does offer you upsells. They do give you a number of pages to go through if you're trying to cancel Prime, but it's not every step of the way that they are trying to force you to spend more money before they allow you to check out and leave. Next thing I miss about the United States is the prevalence of English. I can pretty much count on most places I go in the United States, there will be at least basic English spoken. I can't always count on that in other countries. And in fact, in many places in the United States, people speak fluently. But when I think of basic English, I think more of like certain neighborhoods that are predominantly ethnic minorities. It's not really reasonable to expect people that are new to the United States to immediately have a strong grasp of English. But for the most part, people are going to understand basic English and be able to communicate with you. Not only that, but in the United States, prices don't change based on my, fluency or lack of fluency in English. So I've been in some countries. The one that immediately comes to mind is Mexico, where people assume that because my skin color, my hair color, that I'm of Spanish background when I'm in some of these Spanish-speaking countries. And so this gentleman offered me a certain price for a coconut. I was purchasing a coconut to drink the coconut juice. It was a hot day, and I wanted a coconut. And he said a certain price in Spanish, and I know like a little bit of Spanish, but I didn't understand what he said. And so I said something like, "What?" And then he raised the price by about, I think, 30 or 35%. So that's something to keep in mind. Is the United States, you're not going to have somebody tell you one price, and then when you don't speak English, raise the price again. Now that may happen once in a blue moon, but I would be pretty surprised if somebody raised the price on somebody just because they didn't speak English, especially nowadays, because there's laws and there's protections and there's a lot of consumer protection laws, and it's not going to be good for business to do that to people, especially with the prevalence of Google reviews. I mean, I personally feel like that may be a good short-term strategy, even though it's unethical, but long-term, I don't see that working in the United States, where you just don't want to do that. Not to say people in other countries are all dishonest and out to rip you off, but in some other countries, people, they have a harder time making money, and the money that they make may not go as far as it does comparatively. So they may be in situations where they feel like they need to be dishonest to get by. Now, that's not all, but certainly in that instance, I had the price raised on me because I didn't speak the local language. I find that to be less of an issue in the United States. That's not to say there's not dishonesty in the United States. There's plenty of dishonesty in the States, but it's not going to manifest in that way. Next, prices are all in US dollars. So I'm used to working with US dollars. I'm used to doing business in US dollars. I'm used to paying for things in US dollars. There's no conversion needed. I'm not going to need to convert my US dollars to Swedish kroner or Japanese yen to do business in the United States. I simply do everything in US dollars, and and don't need to think twice about it. Somebody tells me a certain dollar number and I have a general idea of what that is. It's not, I'm not having to do calculations in my mind. Okay, is this a fair price? Oh, did I forget a zero? Is it much more expensive than I thought? None of that's needed. I generally, I understand how to use US dollars. Next, ease of doing business with people in US time zones. So when I'm looking to do business with American people, it's much easier to do business with American people when I'm in the United States already, whether I'm in Pacific, Mountain, Central, or Eastern time zone. It's a much smaller difference to work with than, let's say, I'm in Japan and I've got a 15-hour time difference or 14-hour time difference. Depending on who I'm doing business with in the States, it's much simpler to have no time difference. And alongside that, something that I'm kind of been getting into in the last year is I'm getting into U.S. securities and stocks in the stock market, and it's really nice to know that, okay, so I'm in Central Time, so I'll be able to start buying and selling stocks at 8:30 a.m. and it'll stop at I think, was it 4 p.m., something like that, Central, right? So, but when I'm abroad, the U.S. stock market does not kowtow to my needs. Here in Kuala Lumpur, if I want to start purchasing stocks, now I don't do early or after hours trading, but if I want to start purchasing stocks standard hours, I'll be starting at 10:30 p.m. So I'll have to stay up till 10:30 p.m. and that's just to start buying stocks. If I'm doing research, if I'm wanting to learn more about it. Some of these articles, obviously, they're accessed 24/7. But now, if I want to, sell stocks, well, that's going to go from, 10:30 p.m. until somewhere around like 6 or 7 a.m. So by the time I wake up, the market could very well be closed for the day. So that's something to consider, is that when I'm abroad, I have to adjust my investing to account for the difference in the time zones, and it's a much greater difference than if I were in the United States. Next, finally, security can be easier to work with in the United States. So what I mean by this, well, what I mean is that if I'm going to do something like two-factor authentication, where I'm trying to use my cell phone to add security measures to various technology platforms, that's going to be easier to do in the United States with the US number. Now, some of that can be counteracted, I've heard, by forwarding and this and that. I don't know how to use all those different technologies and services as far as forwarding goes. So that's going to be a challenge, is two-factor authentication if I'm using a foreign telephone number rather than a local number. Additionally, US banks tend not to want to work with people that live abroad permanently. So they're fine with it if you like to travel several months a year, maybe even a big part of the year. But if you live abroad permanently, you'll find, from what I've read, that a lot of US banks don't like that. There's a lot of scrutiny they face from doing that. They're concerned that it's going to cost them more in risk than they're going to make in return. Unless you're talking about like millions and millions of dollars, tons and tons of money, like you're, a multi-millionaire, you may have some trouble with doing, some banking. So that's something I like about being back in the States, is if I want to deal with my bank, it's, their hours are aligned with my day-to-day schedule. I'm going to be able to call them and assume I'll get a customer service representative. If it's a local bank or that has a local location, I can just get in my car and drive over there, pull in and go in and talk to a banker during normal business hours. When I'm over here in Asia, that's not so easy. And to open up a bank account in various Asian countries is not necessarily easy either. You have to, in many cases, have a long-term visa. You have to provide various documentation. You have to prove legitimate usage. You may have to prove the origin. There's a lot of extra factors that go into banking overseas, and in fact, a lot of overseas banks don't like working with American citizens because it basically means they end up having to work with the IRS. And while I'm certainly a fan of following all U.S. tax regulations and all U.S. tax laws, I think it's a fair point to say that dealing with the IRS can be very challenging and complicated, particularly if you're in a foreign country, operating a foreign bank where you're used to dealing with that country's rules and regulations, and you're not used to the complexity of banking rules and regulations in the United States. So I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. It's just for entertainment. But I have to point out that there are some things that I miss about being in the States. And, these things are worth considering if you are planning on going abroad, that it's not going to all be positive. So these are the things that I do miss about being in the United States while I'm abroad. There's plenty of nice things about being abroad that I enjoy, else I wouldn't go to the trouble of traveling. But thank you for watching. I'm Alex Conley. If you enjoyed this video, let me know what you think down in the comments. Give me a thumbs up, all that good stuff, and I will see you next time.